Hi, my name is Sean Mabry. I'm a writer, and today I wanted to talk about the Kurt Vonneguys Live Podcast, which I went to last night, which was hosted at the Last Bookstore in Los Angeles. And I had a wonderful time. The Kurt Vonneguys Podcast, if you haven't heard of it, I highly, highly recommend it. It's a podcast completely dedicated to one of my favorite authors and biggest influences, Kurt Vonnegut. And what they've been doing is basically starting from the very first book he ever published, which was Player Piano. They've been dedicating an entire episode to each work that he wrote. And they go through basically everything. They do sort of a plot synopsis. They dig into what they call the meat, kind of the thematic heart of the story, their favorite moments, the things that were most resonant for them. They pull out favorite quotes. They pull out things that are problematic about the works and challenge those things, and they're just moving through his entire canon sequentially in order of publication date. And the really cool thing is that for the live show they did Palm Sunday, which was a collection of nonfiction he put out kind of in the later half of his career. And they did the standard thing where they went through the book and talked about it. And then they ended it with some audience Q&A, and I actually got to ask the last question. So if you end up listening to that live episode when they put it on the feed, you'll get to hear me. And a couple points, you'll hear my awkward laugh when no one else was laughing, which is also pretty fun. I also got to meet some really cool people. There's actually another one of the people who spoke during the podcast, a guy named Danny, stood up and talked a little bit about his experience as a Marine and how that allowed him to resonate with Kurt's work on a deeper level, because Kurt writes about his experience in Dresden as a soldier. And I think, to me, the most magical part of the whole evening was the fact that the Last Bookstore, if you haven't been to it, it's got a really cool layout where it's got, first off, there's all kinds of cool knickknacks all around. There's interesting sculptures made out of books up on the walls, and just cool posters and weird objects all over the place. But the layout of the store is that there's two stories, and the first story is kind of an open-ish area with a few bookshelves here and there. There's a lot of room to wander, and the way they had it set up for the event is right in the middle they had a seating area, which is where the people who had come for the podcast, like me, were all claimed those spots pretty early, and then a little presentation area for the podcast hosts. And then the rest of the store was still active. It was still open. People were in there shopping for books. So it's kind of cool to watch, the hardcore fans like me there in the middle, but also all these people walking around browsing books and stopping to check in on this conversation and kind of peeking at it and diving in and out of it and like watching from the sides, even up on the second story where they had more bookshelves and sections to look at. And it really was kind of a perfect capsule of what I find so magical about literature is not so much, although I appreciate this too, the lonely aspect of just one person sitting with a book and reading it, but the conversation that happens around books and the way that books, in a culture and media landscape where everything is brutally forced to be simple, where any kind of hard edge is sanded off, where any kind of nuance is stripped out. Books are one of the few areas where you can still have, I think, a real conversation, where we can still dive into the parts of the human experience that are difficult and tough and weird and hard to explain, and explore them in a really open and honest way. And of course, Kurt Vonnegut is one of the best authors in that regard. And it was so magical to be able to sit there and be part of that conversation with the host, and then to also see these people orbiting it and being able to kind of involve themselves as much as they wanted to. It's, in fact, I'm so in love with the format that I want to keep a lookout now for any other event that has a similar format where it's kind of a mixture of very private but also very public, where it's sort of open involvement. Passerby can decide how much they want to listen, So it's ultimately a very intimate conversation, and it's something I think I want to be able to host events like that at some point. So I'll be looking out for those kind of opportunities. But anyway, I highly recommend the Kurt Vonneguys podcast. Huge thank you to them and to the Lasta Bookstore for hosting them. It was a wonderful event, and I don't know if they're going to do another one of these because there's only so many Kurt works to go through. But if they do, keep your eyes open and definitely try to check it out if you can. That's it for this week. I will talk to you next time.